So, hi everyone. Today we're discussing about speech language pathology in Denmark. It's pretty rare to find somebody from India, especially a speech language pathologist from India who settled in a European country. Because, I've seen most of them in Australia, Canada, US, but in Europe, I've not found a lot of people. So, here I have Miss Sapna Bhat, who is in Denmark. And let's talk to her and ask her about how the SLP field is in Denmark. So, hi, Miss
Hi,
Sapna, how are you?
hi. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, I think first I'd like to start off with an introduction. Can you tell me about where you did your bachelor's, your master's, all of that? Because I think you were from India, right? You've done all of that in India.
Yes, yeah. I did my bachelor's and master's from Aish. So I passed out from a master's in 2000. I worked for a year in Jaipur.
Okay.
No, I worked for a year in Mangalore after that,
Oh,
and then
okay.
went back for a PhD. Then went to Jaipur, then went to Mangalore. And yeah, I left India in 2008, and since
Okay.
then I've been here for last 17 years.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh,
10
that's a
years.
long
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. In
Okay, huh.
Copenhagen, Denmark.
Copenhagen,
Yes.
Denmark. Okay, okay. So, what made you, what was the journey like after your master's, after your PhD? So, you did a PhD also in Aish, is it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
In
Uh,
bilingual aphasia.
Oh, bilingual affairs. Yeah, yeah, correct. What is your journey like to go to Copenhagen, Denmark? Because it's something which is very different. Not a lot of people think about this.
No, it was just I got married the year before and moved to Bangalore. And honestly, Bangalore wasn't like clicking the way other places had clicked so far in my career. And my husband wanted to move out, and he was looking for job opportunities in his particular field. He got one here in Denmark. And I was like, okay, let's try new things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's totally yeah.
And I was very clear that if Denmark doesn't work in terms of work, we might move back to India. We might move somewhere else, but work was important. It wasn't like I was ready to sit at home. I wanted to see what happens. So we started with universities because I came from research and academic background, but I think it's very important, and I think it will keep coming up in our discussion that you need to know Danish
Oh, yeah, okay.
to kind of, a lot of work here in research happens in conversational analysis. So if you want to go into aphasia, you need to, be able to access the local population, and then you need to know Danish. And so all of those factors played a role, and I started exploring international schools. And
Okay.
eventually that's what worked out.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
okay.
moved to a school setup, which initially was very difficult
Yeah,
because
from an
apart
adult to a
from
pediatric, yeah.
exactly. And I never thought I would work in pediatric setting. I never thought I would become a clinician because I don't know if it's the same thing with you guys or this generation, but I remember, we sitting and talking about doing speech therapy day in and day out and saying how boring it would be. It isn't boring. I don't think it's boring at all. But then
But
I
the
came from that
mindset, yeah,
mindset.
yeah.
And I also came from a mindset, I don't know, I think it's still there, that if you've done PhD, you cannot move into a clinical
It's
setting.
still there. It's still there.
I know in audiology, a lot of people move to clinical setting, but in SLPs, I don't think it's very common to do that. So there was
Yes.
all of that. And there was a new country, there was a new language. There was so much going on. But I'm just so happy with the journey that happened gradually. So I started as a consultant with 3 kids, you know. Now I'm like so busy, I don't even have time to, if right now I'm thinking if I have a new child come to me, how am I going to find
How,
time?
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's been a journey of understanding how being a consultant works, how you run your own work, and but also learning on the job as you go, working with kids, and how rewarding it's to work in school system. And I absolutely
Hmm.
love it.
Okay, okay. So you started off your journey in Copenhagen as a school SLP only.
Yeah, as a consultant school SLP, yeah, and I continue to be that. So I work with multiple international schools and preschools.
Oh, okay,
I do
okay, huh.
now that my own kid is older, I also do home visits, and so I'm super flexible. At one point of time, I was the only SLP in whole of Copenhagen, so I
Oh
was
my
working everywhere.
goodness. Must have been a
Yeah, so
crazy schedule.
yes, it still is very crazy because I have to shuffle between schools and preschools, and sometimes I do home visits if that makes the most sense for a kid and for
Okay,
my
okay, yeah.
schedule. So it's about being flexible and trying to do new things every time. But it's also it's being in school system, I think, is very rewarding because
Mm-hmm.
you actually see how your work impacts skills.
Correct, correct. Yes. You're
Yeah. And
there.
if
You're
you're
actually there to see it. Yeah.
exactly, and if you're there with the right team, people who understand your work and who support and you support their work, then it's the best work environment, I would say.
Yeah, correct, correct. Yes. Oh, so that's great. So you've been a school SLP. So you're still a school SLP, home visit,
The
private
school
practice.
itself.
It's great that you have such so much of diversity in what you do. Because
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
a lot of times here we all stick to one. It's either you work in an institute or you work in a hospital. But here you're able to do all of this. That's great.
yeah.
Like I think you already said the reason you chose Denmark is because your husband got transferred there. But I would like to ask if there's any qualifications or something which an SLP needs if they want to move to Copenhagen, if they want
Mhm.
to work in Denmark. Is there any particular qualifications they need?
Denmark actually, in Denmark, it's not a regulated profession. So it's like there is no
Okay, huh.
certification. There's no, I think, as far as I know, you can also work after a bachelor's or
Oh,
after
okay,
a
okay, huh,
master's.
huh.
There's for people who graduate from Denmark, there's also a possibility that after being a teacher, you can take a diploma education and work as a speech therapist because there is dearth of educated, qualified people.
Okay, okay.
But the problem is language. So,
Yes.
you cannot go into. So, most of the speech therapy services are provided free of cost in schools
Oh, okay.
by the public sector.
Okay, okay.
So, if you want to get into that, you have to be very proficient in Danish.
Okay,
And
okay.
it could be me that by the time I learned Danish, I still don't feel like I can do speech therapy in Danish. So I have
Oh, okay.
stuck to English and I'm doing English. I'm sure there are
Okay.
other people there who would be like quick to learn a language and figure out the way that you can do it. But in many ways, it's a little difficult system to enter if you don't know.
Okay, okay.
So then you have to stick with the international schools. So
Okay.
you have a language that you can use.
Correct. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So did you learn Danish then?
I did learn Danish. I did pass all the exams and whatever
Okay.
was needed, but then I still don't feel proficient
Okay,
enough,
okay, correct.
especially in spoken language, to be comfortable to say, "Oh, I can do Danish speech
Okay,
therapy."
okay, okay.
Yeah,
So English is what you stick with.
yeah.
Correct.
I'm
Makes
just
sense.
sticking with English. Yes.
Correct. Okay, okay. That's interesting. So, you said that speech language pathology is not really not a regulated profession. So, would the speech therapists in Copenhagen right now, would they be somebody from a special education field or education field? How are they right now there?
There are people who are hardcore speech language
Okay.
pathologists who've done bachelor's, who've done master's. And there is also this set of people who've done a diploma after teacher's
Okay, okay.
education, and they're also working. So it's kind of
A
both at the
mixed.
same
Okay.
time. Yeah, but if you're doing something more specialized, like you're working with aphasia and all that, or any of the brain injuries or
Mm-hmm.
very specific things, then it would be a more qualified SLP.
Okay, okay.
Now it also depends on country to country. Like our next door neighbor, that's Sweden, the profession is very regulated.
Oh, is it? Okay, huh.
I know a few SLPs from India who are there. So you have to learn the language, you have to pass some exams. So
Okay.
it's a very specific process. But in Denmark, it isn't like that. So you have
Okay,
to be
huh.
very careful about where you're moving and what's happening in that particular country.
Okay,
So
okay.
in Sweden, you can't just go and practice
Oh,
until you
okay.
know Swedish. You've got some certification, and there are certain steps. And I heard the exam is a little tricky to pass
Oh,
because
okay,
I was
okay.
recently in touch with someone who said they're still figuring out how to pass.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it
Oh,
depends from country to country. Every
correct,
country has very
correct.
specific, different regulations.
Okay. So when you first went in, was it easy for you to get a job or like, look at schools and be like, hey, I'm an SLP, I can help you out?
It was a lot of sending application. So when I came, it was more like I was focused on the academic. So I was
Okay,
reaching out
correct.
to researchers in aphasia, and I was trying to get that set up. That was also a complicated process. I went, I did talks. I actually already had talked to people in
Okay.
universities, but it wasn't something that worked out in long run. I also simultaneously reached out to schools. It took some time. And like I told you, I started out with one school, which is the biggest international school, which
Okay.
I still work with very
Okay.
closely, Copenhagen International School. And they said, oh, you know what, our speech SLP has just left.
Oh.
We just have a few kids. And they
Oh.
also did not have a very strong special education department.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they were like, we just have a few kids. But I think it means persistent, consistent work
Yeah.
and a lot of, so I have a website and I have LinkedIn and all that. But then I think what worked the most was word of mouth.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And that helped slowly build my caseload to a point where it was sustainable to kind of work into that. But
Okay.
it was also that, we not worked in hardcore English per se in India, right?
Yeah.
So there are sounds like the R's in English are very different, and there are
Yeah.
multiple variations. You have to kind of understand it. And it's very particular and specific, whether it's American English or British English,
Correct. Correct.
Australian
Yeah.
English, it's very different. And when you're in international setups, you might have different kinds of clients like
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to learn that if you're working in articulation, or you have to kind of, people might say you have a dialect.
Correct.
You have an
Correct.
accent,
Accent.
so you have to
Yeah.
kind of start learning these things, which you don't, it's very different when you're not speaking to native speakers. And then you're worried that you're not a native speaker, so that plays in too. And then, for me, it was like changing a field, right? I was into aphasia, I was into
Aphasia. Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
I didn't have my own kids. I didn't have kids in immediate family. So I didn't know how you work with kids or how you hang out with them. And now it's like it's very different. I can start talking to any kid, any place.
Yeah.
But it was that process. It was also like, I was starting out in a new country. Uh, the resources, how do you do professional development, or how do you buy test materials? And
Correct.
we have very specific test materials in international settings that are
Okay. Yeah.
standardized and they're very expensive.
Yeah.
To start with, the school provided me some, but
Mm.
gradually I had to figure out how to do it myself, use my own money to build up my professional development,
Correct.
build up my set of tools. But initially, I just reached out to all my friends who were outside India, usually in US, and I, started getting information from them. I used a lot of free resources from internet, but it was more about focusing on the skill.
Correct.
That seemed quite important at that point
Correct.
in time. But it was a process. It was not easy. It
It's
didn't
not
come
an
like
easy
straight
one.
away.
Correct. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
I was on my own, right? So I was
Yeah.
not being
Correct. Correct.
employed by somebody.
Yeah.
So then you have to figure out that. And then you have to figure out how does being an entrepreneur works? How do tech
Correct.
systems work? What are the rules and regulations around that? And that's all in Danish. So you have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you mentioned that you worked in a school setup predominantly with kids. So are there other SLPs working in hospitals or different settings also in Copenhagen?
There are, again, you have to kind of go back to language then, right?
Yeah.
So as an international, you have limited options then,
Correct.
unless you know Danish. But there are like brain injury centers or hospitals,
Okay. Okay.
early intervention, adult education setups. So there are all kinds of different setups that SLPs can work in. But
Okay.
considering language as a barrier, then you
Probably
get
it would be
limited
a,
to very
yeah.
specific. Like you cannot work in English in aphasia
Correct. Correct.
because you would not have an adult who has an aphasia move to Denmark for work purposes.
And then, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
So
Correct.
it's you're limited then to kids. Then you have to figure out avenues in kids. I know that there are other international SLPs working in other international schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's actually right now kind of saturated in Copenhagen.
Oh, okay.
There
Okay.
are 4 or 5 speech therapists, and I think international speech therapists in English. And I think
That's,
that's
yeah.
all the space there is for.
Okay.
If you
Okay.
want to also, say, oh, I earn my living through this. If you just want to do it as part-time, you might still be able to find something.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was wondering, is there any registration or qualifying exam? You said there's something in Sweden, but in Denmark, there isn't anything, right?
There's nothing. If you want to run a company, then there are processes for
Correct.
company, but there's nothing for profession specific
Oh,
stuff.
okay. Okay.
So I am certified by Canadian Association.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I wanted to have a certification that I keep
Yeah.
updated and everything. It also keeps me on my toes because I have to do professional development to
Correct.
keep my
Correct.
certification up. So that's what I have because of my own intentions, because of my
Correct.
own work. but it's not something that's required.
That's required. All right, all right. So you would say that okay, so you were talking about the so you the school part, you working in different part. How was it to start your own clinic over there?
So it started out small, like I said, with the 3
Correct.
kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I say clinic, I don't really have a place because
Okay,
I
okay.
go and do therapy in schools.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's very nice that schools provide me a space. They provide me whatever help is required to get started. And I think it makes most sense because I see kids in the environment they're
Correct,
comfortable
correct. Makes
in the
sense.
environment where they need to function. So that way, in terms of space and all, I didn't have much requirements, but
Okay.
it was more about, do I have appropriate test materials? Do I have appropriate materials?
Hmm.
That took a little bit of time to develop. So
Okay.
gradually I build up on those resources. But then it's also like, uh, do I have the training? Of course, we
Yeah.
learn about autism and stuff. So I do see a lot of neurodivergent kids. But it's gradually building up skills towards that. So I
Correct.
think that was super important.
Okay.
Initially, you don't get worried about are you doing the right thing in terms of processes? You
Yeah.
set up a business. Are you filing your taxes right? Copenhagen Communa had a lot of seminars and
Oh,
resources
okay.
for
Good.
women
Huh.
entrepreneurs. So I
Oh,
attended a lot of those meetings. And I remember somebody, an advisor from the municipality, who said, it's not about do I file taxes right or am I doing the right thing. It's about building your work. So once you build your work, you'll have so much work that you might have money to spare to hire someone to do your taxes or to hire
okay.
someone to help you with the legal aspects. So I thought that was really good advice, to focus on your skill and building up your business, your caseload, and then other things happen
You can get
gradually. Like,
somebody else. Yeah,
yeah,
correct.
I still do my taxes myself because I enjoy the process. It's not fun, but I like it.
Okay.
But I know that if I wanted, I could hire someone and
Okay, okay.
get my taxes done. So that's not your primary thing. What the primary
Hmm.
thing is, building up your skills
Correct,
and
correct.
resources to do justice to what you're doing. So that's very important. Even if you are a consultant, don't forget about professional development. So even
Correct.
after 16 years, every single year, I do learn
You
something
still
new.
do. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so that is very important according to me. So don't lose sight of that. Don't think like, oh, I'm spending my own money on professional development, but it pays in the long run. So every year I had set out a goal of doing some workshop or
Hmm.
something. And actually, it's much easier now because everything is online and there's so much
Yeah,
free professional development available
correct.
that you don't even have to worry about spending money. But you should be very keen on keeping up with the
Learning and
skills, knowing
updating.
what's
Correct.
happening in the field, and doing justice to your profession. I think that's the core, rather than worrying about all the other things. They'll fall into place. But
Correct.
you have to be very perseverant. You have to be very flexible. As a consultant, you might not have set times. There might be days you work short. There might be days that are extra long. So you have to get ready to do those things.
Correct, correct. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. So but are there any teaching institutes for SLP, like bachelor's in SLP or master's in
Yeah.
SLP in Denmark?
Yeah. All the universities have courses. So Copenhagen University has one, Southern Denmark. So there are multiple
There are
universities.
courses. Okay, okay.
There are courses, both bachelor's and master's. And after you asked me, you said you were going to ask this. So I looked it up, could people go into that? And I realized that for both the courses, you need to know Danish.
Ah, okay, okay. So it would be
So
hard for an international student to get into that course.
yeah, and I don't unless you're doing a PhD in Denmark, I don't think it should be something that otherwise you'd also start worrying about the language. So,
Correct,
that might not be your first option unless,
correct.
you're thinking that in your future, something is going to make you move to
Move
Denmark.
to Denmark,
Usually
yeah.
it's a spouse. So,
Yeah.
So, but the good thing about Denmark is that spouse don't need a different visa.
Oh, okay, okay.
So your spouse's visa, you are eligible for work.
Ah,
So
okay,
you can
okay.
just start out. You don't have to do anything.
Oh, okay, okay.
On the other hand, long-term things. So this is dependent visa, which is easy.
Mm-mm.
As long as your spouse has a visa, you have a visa and you can do things. But if you want, like, like the green card in
Correct,
US, it's
correct.
called permanent residentship or citizenship. It is quite tricky. In Denmark, it takes a long time.
Okay,
There is
okay.
language test. There is citizenship
Oh,
exam. everything has exams. So it's not
Okay.
an easy process if you're thinking long term.
Okay. Okay.
But it's a
Oh.
good city and a good country to be in. It's safe, it's clean, it's sustainable. If you look at most of these happiness surveys or sustainable city
Yeah.
surveys, Copenhagen and Denmark is always in
Oh,
first
okay.
five.
Okay.
It's a good place to raise a family. It's very
Mm.
family friendly. It's safe for kids. So there are many things like that. So it's kind of figuring out, what
What
your
is the,
priorities
yeah,
are. It
correct.
might not be the best place for, young SLPs who don't have a family to come to. It's a quite a place. It
Okay.
moves
Okay.
at its own pace, and it's a very close knit society. So it's not very easy to get into Danish society because
Mm.
they're very close together. They're very nice people, but they're very private people. So it
Okay.
depends
Okay.
on what your preferences are. I
Okay.
absolutely love Danish society. It suits my personality very
Okay.
well.
Okay.
They're helpful, but they don't bother you when you
Okay.
don't.
Huh.
And I like that. So it suits me, but it might not suit another person. So you have to kind of figure those things out as you
Okay.
go.
Okay. So, another question is, how is the awareness of our field in that country?
I think it's quite all right,
Okay.
especially because the services are provided through the school to
Okay.
children from all the ages. So it might be that you have longer waiting periods,
Mm-hmm.
to wait longer, but
Correct.
there
Okay.
is awareness and there are services everywhere. So I think
Okay.
it's
Okay.
quite good.
Okay. Okay. Copenhagen is the one of the main cities, but is it the same in other cities also in Denmark? Would you, I mean, I don't know if you know about that.
I know that there are international schools in other places. So
Okay.
if we look at the Danish system, it's the same
Okay. Okay.
in all the cities. You have local governments, there might be changes in funding or something,
Mm-hmm.
but more or less the processes are the same.
Okay.
But when you're looking at the international setup, it depends on what city you're going to. Does it have a sizable amount of international population? Does it have a good big international school?
Yeah.
Then you have a possibility of doing something there.
Okay.
Because I think outside of school to just start a speech therapy private practice outside of school would be much trickier because then
Okay.
you don't have a network to start with.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it is important to see, is there an international school? Is there a sizable amount of international population if you're moving to that city?
Okay. So
Yeah.
the school is the one which provides the services, right? So the children, is it like, is they have to pay extra for it? How does the financial part
So
work?
in public, if you have children in Danish schools, it's all free of cost. So
Okay. Okay.
schooling here is free of cost,
Okay. Huh.
and all the additional services are also free of cost if your child needs it. Now, international schools is different because they're
Mm,
private. So you
correct.
are choosing to pay. That means you
Okay.
are paying for everything else. Also.
Okay. Okay.
So for speech therapy or occupational therapy, special education, that would be on top of the school fee
School's
that the
fees.
parents are
Okay.
paying.
Okay.
Yeah. In
So,
many cases, it's the companies that pay for parents
okay.
to have
Okay.
their kids.
Correct.
So it
Correct.
depends, it
Okay.
depends
Okay.
on the school, it depends on who your client is. Is
Okay. Okay.
insurance paying for them? Is it workplace or are they paying out of their own
Okay.
pocket?
Okay.
But if you're in a private setup, then it's payment.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
not free. Yeah.
Okay. So is there an average salary or something for SLPs in Denmark? It's a pretty difficult question to answer.
I know it's hard to say. Um, So I was looking at, what is that everybody charges. So now, for example, for 1 hour session. So it's
Okay.
around 900 to 1,000 krona. And I
Okay.
think the conversion is around 11 or 12.
Okay. Okay.
So it would be like 9,000, 10,000 rupees for one
Okay.
hour session. Let's not look at it in
Yeah,
rupees. It
you can't
sounds
look
so
at it in
much.
INR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the salaries would be commensurate to that. So that would
Okay.
mean, like, if we convert it into Indian money, maybe 4 or 5 lakhs per month.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But it's a very expensive place to be in. We have very high
Oh.
tax rates. So 35 to 40%
Oh,
just taken
wow.
off.
Okay.
Yes. Because we have a lot of, like I told you, the health services are
Correct.
free.
Correct. Free.
Education is free. Public transport is very
Okay.
accessible. So you're paying a lot in taxes, but you're also seeing benefits. It's a safe
Hmm.
place. It's a clean
Cost
place.
of living is also generally higher, like the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. One of the most expensive places in Europe to live in.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That makes
everything
sense.
is high. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
have to also think about that. You might say the salaries are high, but then,
But yeah, that is
spending a
important.
lot of money on other things.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a couple of more questions. Oh, do you know other SLPs from India over there?
Not in Denmark, but I know a few in Sweden and
Okay,
some
okay.
in Norway. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Are there
Very
other
few.
very
I
few,
was
right?
trying to get
Yeah.
everybody together, but I didn't find many people. So,
Okay, okay. But there are other international SLPs in Denmark.
yes, there are a few more that I know of that are in Copenhagen, and I think one or two more cities also. Yeah,
Okay,
but
okay.
not from India.
Okay, okay, fine. So, anything else you want to tell us? Anything else you want to add to this?
Um, I would just say, I think SLPs have to think about.
Mm,
I feel strongly because I've gone back to India and I've spoken to SLPs in Aish and I've spoken to outside Aish and I've done some webinars. I feel like we as SLPs are so focused on one-on-one sessions in our session. We have to kind of move outside of that,
yeah.
Like I do that, but I also do a lot of work on the playground.
Okay. Oh, wow, nice.
So a few years back, a parent proposed that to me because I was going a lot into social thinking and social communication and
Okay.
on the clinic. Because I have a lot of kids who find it very easy to communicate with me, but they don't communicate
With the others, correct.
at a similar level with others. And then I was like, okay, then something is going wrong. This is not enough. I have to
Yeah.
go with that. And all those discussions with the parents and my team and my own skills eventually led to someone asking me if I could support their kid in the playground. And I was very hesitant to start with because
Yeah.
playgrounds are
Something we're not
chaotic.
used to. Yeah.
No. And they're not, we say, oh, go and say, can I play with you and then join the play? No, it doesn't work like that. Playgrounds are very chaotic. There are no rules. There's nothing. It's sensory overload. There's so much happening in playground. And now I've been doing this for 2.5 years. I realized that there's so much you can do out on the playground.
Oh,
So I went with a set agenda the first day. I'm going to ask my child to do this, and then he's going to do this.
yes.
Then this is going to happen. No, it doesn't work like that. But then what happens is you can support the communication in a real world environment. You can see their strengths and weaknesses, and
Mm.
then you can work on those weaknesses in one-on-one session, and then take that out into the playground and help them use those skills.
Okay,
So what
okay.
I'm saying by that is when this came up, I was like, oh, should I do this? It's hard, it's cold, sometimes it's cold
Oh,
outside. I don't
yeah.
play out on the playground. There were so many things like that. And I'm right in front of everybody doing things. There are other staff who are on duty in the playground.
Yes.
You feel very exposed because in your room, you're very safe and protected. You know what you're doing. But what happened is the interactions that came out to be about. And when I thought about it, and I was like, I'm the most skilled person to do this.
Yes.
If I don't take it, it's an opportunity presenting itself. I have to jump in, even if I feel vulnerable, even if I feel like it's not going according to my plan. I have to figure out how this works. And this is also rewarding. So let's see
Correct.
how this goes. And gradually I started developing skills in that area. And I
Okay.
feel very comfortable going out on playground.
Wow.
And it's not just my kids that benefit.
It's the
There's a
others
lot,
also, yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of kids who find playground difficult.
Hmm.
So now I have this, when I go out, I'm like Pied Piper of Hamelin. Everybody is following me. I have a bunch of 10 kids who follow
Oh,
me
that's
around.
nice.
But they also benefit from being with each other and
Correct,
benefit from
correct.
me scaffolding stuff like that. So what I wanted to say with that is like, be ready to take up these challenges, be ready to go outside of the safety of your office or your
Correct,
workplace
correct.
and see what's a realistic environment like for your client, whether it's a school going kid or it's someone working, and what are the real challenges, because
Hmm.
you might feel that you do really well
Ye-
inside of your session, but that's not adequate. I feel even in places where there are integrated setups, in India, SLPs are not going out into playgrounds, or
I
they're
have
not
never
seeing,
done that, yeah.
yeah, they're not seeing real life interactions. And that's very different. It's very easy to say, practice in your session. How do you join a play?
Correct.
You tap the shoulder, you
Yeah.
say, can I play? No, it doesn't work like that. You'll be the odd one out if you did
If
that.
you do that, yeah.
Yeah, it's not that. That's not
Yeah,
how it
yeah.
works. You just join in, or it depends on the stage of play. How do you
Hmm.
enter a conversation without being, it being too obvious to you? So you have to be ready to kind of do these things, and you have to think out of box and say,
Correct.
okay, how can I contribute? And if you think, it's something in the area of communication, then kind of jump right in.
Hmm.
And then gradually, I feel like even when I started speech therapy with kids, I wasn't completely ready. But we also have to say that, I'm going to learn on job.
Correct,
I'm
correct.
committed to
Yes.
learning, and I'm going to learn on job, and I'm
Yes.
going to keep my thinking flexible. So I'm open to saying, oh, this didn't work. How do I do it differently? And for me, last few years, playground and listening to autistic adults talk about what was important for them and what were their priorities, and becoming neuroaffirmative
Mm.
in my therapy was a big change in thinking.
Yeah.
Like eye contact. Oh, we don't say eye contact. Eye contact is very
Yeah.
distressing for some kids. Okay, so eye contact is no more a goal. I don't work on it anymore. I used to. I don't now. So you have to be also thinking about, oh, this was not a practice that made sense. Now my
But
knowledge
now,
has
yeah,
changed
correct.
and I need to update my processes. So that's why it's important to keep developing skills. That's a very important thing. Be ready, be flexible. If eventually it's word of mouth. Now when I
Yeah.
go out on playground, for example, I have so many teachers who tell me, oh, we have a kid who would benefit. I wish this kid could come and work with you.
Oh.
Then now I get playground referrals per se. Like I get other referrals, but I
Oh,
also have
wow.
people reaching out and saying, do you think you can support my kid in the playground? We think that kid will benefit, and it does benefit. It's been such a fulfilling experience of
Yeah.
going
Oh,
out on playground and seeing my children flourish in multiple ways, because you know playing is important for
it
kids.
is
So
important, really. Yeah.
you have to figure out what are these essential places where you can transfer skills beyond your clinics, and you have to kind of collaborate actively with teachers, parents, workplace, to make sure that your work is effective.
Correct, correct. That's good because I think in the past 2 years or so, I've seen a trend in SLPs in India where we've all been going towards accepting the neurodiversity movement and the focus on eye contact, compliance, all of that has reduced. But I think this takes it one step forward. It gives me also good ideas. I'm just thinking of doing a session in a playground nearby right now.
That is perfect. I think we need to kind of know about play. We're not very
Correct.
aware how play changes from age levels and their cultural influences. In India, it's a bit different. In other
Yeah.
countries, it's a bit different. So it's really good to just go out, like you said, go to a playground, see how neurotypical children play. How does it scaffold? What are the challenges? So not with the idea that you want to fit your
Correct.
neurodiverse child into neurotypical world, but to see what are the challenges. So sometimes the challenges are physical. They might need hands-on help to
Correct.
climb
Correct.
something.
Correct. Yeah.
Sometimes the challenges are sensory. Sometimes the challenges are miscommunication. There is non-verbal language. There's so much. And sometimes it's about finding the right fit, finding the right person that this child would
Correct.
click with.
Correct.
And sometimes we do. In the school I'm in, I have a very passionate special education team. So it's like we work together, but we also sometimes do like this little matchmaking. So if we see a child click with someone, we get together to provide them multiple opportunities to be
Okay. Okay.
together.
Okay.
So we're
Oh,
like,
that's
oh,
good.
we matchmaking,
Correct. Correct.
giving them opportunity to be with each other, not forcing. So all of that, comes with experience, comes with going out there. So if you don't do that, you're not going to figure these subtle
Correct.
things.
Correct.
You might, take for granted. You think your child is talking to you, so they're going to be talking to everybody. No, they
Yeah.
don't do that. Over the years, I've had so many kids who only speak to me. And then I am like, I'm very happy, but then
But it has
oh,
to go
that's not
beyond
the
that.
right thing.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I feel very happy when, they just wave at me, but they're talking to someone else and they don't need me like a stick.
Correct.
That, oh,
Correct.
Sapna is the only person they talk to and open up.
Correct. Oh,
That's
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 good.
special, but then they have to move beyond that also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. So I really hope that SLPs in India also get such an opportunity because a lot of them work in private practice and schools are a little lesser compared to where the private practice SLPs here. So
Mhm.
hopefully we do
But
get.
collaborating with parents and going
Yes.
out on the
Yes.
playground or giving them skills for playground is very, very important. Because I think, especially kids on the spectrum, especially if they're high functioning, it's very difficult in their mind that they can do math and they can do science and they
But
can do reading,
yeah,
but they can't play.
they
Whereas
can't.
other kids might not find science
It's
and
the
math easy,
opposite.
but they can
Yeah.
play with such ease. So
Correct.
I have had
Correct.
kids who have vocalize this to me. It's like,
Okay.
how can I not play? How is
Oh,
it possible? No, but
oh.
I want to have friends. I don't know how to do that. I have had also ones who don't want to play. So
Mm,
again, that comes, you have to sit down with the children and see, especially the ones who are verbal, and advocate for their needs.
mm.
They might not want to play, so don't force them. But if they want to play, you are the right
Provide,
person to help
yeah.
them scaffold that environment, provide them
Yeah.
tools, give them opportunities. So working with parents, working with school, working with teachers, going outside of your clinic, and for me, right now, listening to neurodiversity advocates, especially who
Yeah.
themselves are autistic or ADHD, there are a lot of SLPs and OTs
Yeah.
who are autistic or have ADHD. And then when they talk about their experiences, but even if they're not SLPs, but they are telling you what was difficult, what was easy, what worked, what support they could have had and done better. Some of our goals, which are not
Correct,
neuroaffirming,
correct.
so you kind of have to listen to them, read and reflect on your practices constantly. Like it's not like you're done one day. It's a process which keeps happening.
Correct, correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Nice to hear about all this. Because there's a lot of neurodiversity accepting happening right now, but we need to go a lot more further for this.
Yeah. And it's a constantly evolving process.
Correct.
So
Yes.
it is very important to read books by them and listen to them and now there is a lot more than there was 15 years back.
Yes,
So
definitely.
we have so much opportunity. Like there is so much stuff on LinkedIn. There are books. There are free,
There's even great
professional
Instagram
development.
pages as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, loads of them. So just if you're passionate about something, just learn more about it.
Yes. Okay. Anything else you want to mention? Last thing about Denmark, or how you like the city, how the SLP world is in Denmark?
Oh, wow. I don't think I'm part of a bigger SLP work. So I still do some teaching and some things with aphasia here and there once in a while. But yeah, Denmark is a lovely country. According to me, it doesn't get too cold. It gets a bit dark in winters. It's not too far away from India. You
Yeah.
have direct flights. It's a beautiful country, according to me. Beautiful in the sense that it's not like dramatic nature or
Yeah.
something, but they know what they want for their country and they have their priorities set right. It's safe, it's family friendly. Uh, yeah, nice private people just suits my taste perfect. But if you're not, you want people who are, it's not like US. It's a bit different. You will not
Mm,
have random people come and talk to you in here,
mm.
and which I am very happy with. But some people find it very alienating. Sometimes they feel that people are very cold, but
Okay.
they're just respecting your
Yeah,
privacy.
okay.
Yeah. So it's a sustainable city. It's very easy to go around here. Public transport is excellent. Work-life balance is really good. It's a good place to raise a family, is what I
Okay,
would say.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But you also have to see what are your pros and cons in terms of
Correct,
many
correct.
other things, right? So
Correct.
it's a decision based on that. But it's
Yeah.
not a place you would just you say, oh, I want to move out of India, so my
And
first
this,
choice is
yeah,
going to be
correct,
Denmark.
correct.
So it's not like that,
Okay.
unless you end up in Denmark and then
Then
you
you
want
would,
to
yeah,
explore things.
correct, correct.
Maybe for PhD, if you want to, there's a lot of work happening in conversational analysis.
Mm.
So most
But
of
I
the
get
Danish
knowing
universities.
Danish is one important factor which people
Exactly.
have to
But if
think.
you want to do like cross linguistic or
Okay,
something,
okay,
maybe
yeah.
you can find someone who works in that area. But for bachelor's and master's, I don't think it makes sense if you don't know Danish or you don't have a Danish connection. And
Correct.
even if you learn Danish, it's a small country. Where else would you use that language,
Oh,
So
yes,
you have to
correct.
think about is it worth spending your
Yeah,
time doing that and seeing? But if you
correct.
end up in Denmark, then it's a different
Then it's
story.
a different
Then
story.
you have to
Okay.
make the best of what's coming through to
Okay,
you.
yeah. Makes sense. So I think this discussion has given us like a whole view about what to expect and what you
Yes.
need to keep in mind if you're thinking of this. But it was a really good discussion because a lot of SLPs would just think of this place, but knowing the background, knowing what really goes into it and how the speech therapy field is in Denmark, that's pretty important. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we've covered most of the topics which we wanted to.
Yes.
And I think if others have any questions, they can reach out to you via email probably.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll add your email down in the description, and anything else you can add. They can always contact me and I can refer them to you.
Sure.
So thank
Yes.
you so much for the discussion, and this was
Thank
really
you.
insightful. Thank you so much for watching my video. I'm always open to more discussions on this topic on my Instagram, Happy Crisps, or you can always email me. Bye bye.